Ride the coaster, get cool in the waves, in the pool, you'll have fun. So come on over.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Vince Gargiulo, and I wrote this book right here, Palisades Amusement Park, A Century of Fond Memories. I was one of the producers of the PBS documentary that you might have seen in the New York marketplace on Channel 13. Today, I maintain the official website for for the Palisades Amusement Park Historical Society, palisadespark.com. And I'm sure many of you are here from Facebook. I have the Palisades Amusement Park Historical Society on Facebook. Last season and this season as well, I'm the curator of the Palisades Amusement Park exhibit at the Mahwah Museum. Remember, if you want to be kept up to date on any Palisades Amusement Park events that are happening at the museum, please feel free to go to their website, mahwahmuseum.org. And at the very bottom, you'll see a link to join our mailing list. Click there, sign up, and we'll keep you informed. Like Charlie said, February 20th, I'll be doing the history of Palisades Amusement Park again as a webinar probably, and it's free. So please, feel free to check it out. Tonight we have some incredible guests, all of which had very good insight into the workings of Palisades Amusement Park. We'll get to meet them all. We have Gene Focarelli, who worked the lemonade stand at the park. We have Chris Page, whose great-great-grandfather built the first penny arcade at the park way back in 1915. We have Donald Jacoby, who is the grand nephew of park owners Jack and Irving Rosenthal. And we have the best-selling author, Alan Brennert, and we'll get to meet them all a little later. Right now, first, let's get started with Gene Focarelli. By the way, if you have any questions for any of our guests, just please type them in the chat box at the bottom. And
Q&A box.
It says Q&A.
Yeah,
that's what I meant. In the Q&A, in the Q&A box at the bottom, and. Ken will be looking at them, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible before we're all through. My first guest, Gene Focarelli. He worked the lemonade stand that was right next to the pool in 1968 and 69. He grew up in Cliffside Park. Gene, thanks for joining us.
Hi, I'm really glad to be here. And before we get on with this, I'd just like to put out to everybody that thank you very much to Vince Gargiulo for keeping Palisades Amusement Park alive. Without your efforts, I think it would have been like what happened to the roller coaster. It would have just been gone. There's a plaque because of your efforts by where it used to stand by Winston Towers, and your books, and the Palisades Amusement Park Historical Society, everything. You keep Palisades Amusement Park alive. And the little miniature at the museum is just phenomenal. It's just wonderful. So my personal thank you.
Thank you. So tell me, let's talk about you and Palisades. What were your responsibilities in working at the park?
My responsibilities was just make nice ice cold lemonade. Next door was the French fry stand. So they would get French fries, they would come over and get a lemonade, and then they would make, if they turned around, they could go to where the bandstand was and go see all the wonderful acts. And if I leaned out enough from the lemonade stands, I could see the acts. I can hear them all the time, but leaning out. But it was always crowded. There was always a ton of people there waiting for the ice cold lemonade.
That's what made Palisades successful, were the crowds.
Yeah.
So tell me, what was the secret? Can you give us any inside look at the secret to that delicious lemonade? I'm sure anybody who's had that lemonade certainly remembers it. Can you give us any?
Don't let this get out.
Secret recipe.
Okay, you had your glass, and you had your half a lemon. You only had a half a lemon, and you squeezed the juice out of it. You poured it into the cup. You put a couple of spoonfuls of sugar. You put some ice in it, put water in it, shake, 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 pour it into a plastic cup, and you gave it to the people in there, and they're waiting and they're waiting, and they basically drink half of it while standing in front of you.
Yeah.
And then most of the time they would just walk a couple of feet, turn around, and get another one.
Do you remember how much a lemonade cost back then?
I'm gonna say maybe a quarter, if it was that much. It was probably 25 cents.
Yeah. Yep. Now, I remember with the stands with all the lemonade stands that they had in the park, there was always these gigantic lemons that hung from the inside rafters of the booth. What was the deal with those?
On the bottom, there was a little spigot. So when I was there, it wasn't functioning, but I'm assuming that it was just water. That's what you turn it, and that's where you got the water from.
Lemonade didn't actually come out from that lemon. That may have just had water.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
when I was there, it was just for show. It wasn't functioning. But I'm sure back in the day that there was a water pipe connected to that, so they can get the water from there.
Yeah. Now you said your stand was close to the free act stage.
Yes.
So on a weekend, did you ever have a chance to actually get out of the stand, maybe take a break and see some of the artists?
We had a deal with the French fry stand. They couldn't give it to us in the cups because they were counted. So they would give us, they cut the box where the containers came in and give us French fries, and we would give them, make them lemonade. So I would take a lemonade, I would take some French fries in the box, and just walk down to the free act stage. And what was my break? 15 minutes or so, and just stand there and eat the French fries with the there was no ketchup allowed. There was malt vinegar and salt, and drink the lemonade, and then say, okay, go back to work. But like I said, just lean out. You were able to see the acts on the stage. And across was a little penny arcade that, ironically, my grandfather used to work there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Huh. What was your favorite ride at the park? You got to ride on most of the rides that were there, right?
Yeah. The Cyclone at the end, but the one that got me all the time that I really liked, because it was the Wild Mouse. Because the Wild Mouse, you'd go up, and it would turn really, but then it would go like you were going off the end of the cliffs and going into the Hudson River.
It was a great coaster, great wooden coaster.
At the last second, it would make that turn. But you knew that you were safe, but you always just had that one microsecond of doubt, which made it spectacular.
Right. And part of what made that ride so special was you were sitting in a car that only held up to 2 people, I think. The wheels were set back. So as all the curves were very sharp. So because the wheels were set back, the front end of your car actually looked like it was going off the track.
We're going off.
But then it would make that sharp turn. And that was I agree with you. For a coaster, that was one of my favorite coasters ever.
Yeah.
And you remember they had batting cages?
Yes.
Right.
I was in the Cliffside Park Little League, and the coaches would take us there because there was no batting cages that I remember anywhere, and take us as a team with our uniforms on and go there for practice. Saturday mornings, when there was a holiday from school, and I'm not sure what it cost. Was it maybe 10 cents or 25 cents, and you get, I don't know how many balls, but it was a place to actually practice and get your swing down. It was really a lot of, and plus you're in the park.
And a lot of kids, especially a lot of the local kids, certainly got a lot of their early Little League practice at Palisades.
Oh yeah.
People have said that Palisades, it attacked every sense. The taste of the lemonade and the colors of the neon lights at night were spectacular to look at. I remember the smells of Palisades. I remember the smells of those French fries you were talking about. Do you have any memories like that?
Yeah, from where the lemonade stand was right next to the pool to the right. The pool was there, but then you'd go up a hill, and at the top of that hill was the Belgian waffles. And man, if you had some change in your pocket, you got Belgian waffles with the strawberries on it and that fresh whipped cream. Nothing better, and that smell was tremendous.
I agree with you, and I remember it was because that particular waffle stand you're talking about was so close to the pool. It was this mixture of the saltwater spray that was coming from the waterfall that was in the pool that was mixed with that vanilla smell of the waffles. And it was
man, I wish they could put that in a spray can.
Do you remember the fun house?
Yes, the fun house was really cool. It was like 1,000 things to do in it. You know, you just didn't walk through it. It was just so many things to do. But what I liked was that giant wooden tube that everybody tried to stand up and go around, and you get so far, boom, and you go down. That thing was hard, but you got up and you tried to do it again. That was really cool.
I just stood there and stared, and then the guy would show me where the door was, so I didn't have to go through it to exit the place. Any favorite memories of the park before we open this up for Q&A?
Well, living in Cliffside Park, I was on the other side of Lawton Avenue. Still, I was able to hear the click, 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 click of the cyclone, and then silence, and then scream. And we heard that. I'm sure all of Cliffside Park heard it. But it's the smells, it's the sights. When you got closer to the park, as a kid growing up, we didn't have any money, so you go around town looking for a matchbook, and if you were okay with the matchbook, you can get in for free. And there was always something, a strip of tickets on the floor or something. But if you were lucky, you took down the striker and you saw the little PAL figure, you were able to get a strip of tickets, and I think you got a hot dog and a soda with that.
I think it was a couple of free rides if the little PAL guy was in the match.
The little PAL was there.
And living in town too, if you walked into any of the stores on Anderson Avenue, there were piles of discount tickets, which got you the free admission. And then if you brought that ticket to the administration booth, I think that's when you got a strip of tickets for 85 cents or something like that.
Just growing up there, hey, what do you want to do today? Let's go to the park. That's what we called it. We called it the park.
And I lived a block away from you in Cliffside, and we were very blessed to be able to have someplace like Palisades that was our playground. I mean, literally.
How about opening day for school? They closed the schools
last day of school.
Oh, last day of school. It was we had a parade.
Yep.
All going to the park. Come on.
That was something that the Rosenthal brothers, the owners of the park, that was something that they did. Right up until the end, they made a deal with all the public schools in Cliffside and Fairview. And on the last day of school, all the kids from the different schools would march in a parade. And it was a big deal. I mean, town officials, the mayor and the police department and everything was part of the parade, the high school marching band. And one by one, each school would get in line. They would march their way up to the park. Then they would give them that strip tickets, the combination tickets, which had rides. And that's where there was always a food ticket, a hot dog, and probably a lemonade on that. And although the park gave all of that for free to all the kids in town, they knew, they were good businessmen. They knew that parents would meet the kids there, and the parents would pay to get in. Aunts, uncles, everybody would kind of join in, and it was a great day of fun, and especially for the kids. That became the traditional last day of school for many.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And there was some kind of rumor going on that there was a hole in the fence.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe we can talk about it. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm gonna let Donald tell us about the hole in the fence, but. Gene, I want to thank you. Ken, do we have any questions so far?
We do.
We do.
No, we do. Let me, one is, what happened to the carousel horses?
The carousel horses stayed with the carousel, although Irving could have made a fortune if he broke up the carousel when the park closed and sold it as piecemeal. because back then it was really very chic to own a carousel horse. And he could have made a fortune with it, but he wanted the carousel to live on. And it goes on for a couple of pages in my books. It talks about what happened to the carousel after it closed. But long story short, it's in Canada's Wonderland, and I think it's Ontario, Canada. And they refurbished it, and the carousel is still in operation today and still looks as great as ever.
Outstanding. How great is that?
Road trip.
Yeah, right.
Yes, we need to get a picture of the carousel today.
Yes, yes.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Any other questions, Ken?
Oh, yeah. How old was Gene when he worked there? Was this a summer job for you, Gene?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yeah, I was still in high school.
So what, 16, 17?
15, 16.
You could get working papers. That, Palisades was the place. I think at 14 you could get
14
working papers.
Yeah.
And if you were a kid in town, they would give you a job. They'd find a job for you if you wanted to work.
That's right.
Okay. Is Hal Jackson still alive?
He passed a few years ago. I'm thinking five years ago or so.
Who was your favorite act that you saw or heard while you were working? I guess that might be a question for Gene. Or I guess
oh,
for
boy.
Gene.
I love the Young Rascals. I remember they were there. I remember seeing them there. Well, the Rascals later on. They weren't the Young Rascals anymore. But it's just every time I worked there, there was somebody on stage. It was just magnificent. It was a great place to be.
I think a lot of young people today would have no idea what it was like to live in a town where every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, were free concerts, and not necessarily nobodies. I mean, there were a couple of, local bands that performed there, but, Leslie Gore and the Jackson 5 and the Fifth Dimension and
the Supremes.
It's unbelievable how many people, how many top 10 artists performed at the park, including Tony Bennett.
That was the place that they went to. They all wanted to play Palisades Amusement Park.
Yeah.
Any recollections of Anna Cook?
Well, we'll get to Anna when I talk to Donald.
Okay.
Anna was the niece of Irving Rosenthal.
Does anyone remember the sideshows? I remember Bruce actually is writing this. Bruce remembers a miniature pony.
Yes, they had a freak animal show that was run by Arch and May McCaskill, and they had the world's smallest horse. They had the world's largest dog, which was a Saint Bernard. They
a cow with two.
A cow with 2 heads, a cow with 6 legs. And really what it was, the McCaskills loved their animals. A lot of people think there was something inhumane about putting them on display, but farmers across the country knew of the McCaskills. And if their animal had a baby that was deformed in some way, well, most of the time before the McCaskills, they would have just, killed the animal because it would be a burden to them. But they knew that the McCaskills would pay money for their animals with deformities, and they treated them like pets. In the winter, they brought them all down to Florida where they wintered. So there was nothing inhumane about what they were doing. And it was fascinating for people to see and go on the inside and see these animals up close.
Do you remember Clay Cole and his shows at the bar?
Yes, Clay was, Clay was televised. So he was to us what Dick Clark was to Philadelphia. He had a weekly show that was aired from the casino that was by the pool, and he was the first host in the United States to show the Rolling Stones. That was the first televised appearance of the Rolling Stones was on the Clay Cole Show.
The question list is growing. Do you want to continue?
Yeah, let's go on with our guests. We'll get to some
Okay.
questions later.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. This is wonderful.
Gene, if you could stay with us, I'm sure
Oh,
we're
absolutely.
going to
I'm
be talking
here.
some
Yep.
more. All right, terrific.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's talk about Jack and Irving Rosenthal. In 2018, Irving was honored by putting him in the Hall of Fame.
From selling shovels and pails to beachgoers at age 9 to building the iconic Cyclone, Irving Rosenthal's Coney Island career was only the beginning for this creative entrepreneur. For over 60 years, he set new standards for marketing, licensing, cleanliness, and maintenance. He helped make Palisades Amusement Park one of the most famous parks in the world. And through importing European rides for his amusement park, Irving Rosenthal helped globalize the industry.
We're very fortunate to have with us now Donald Jacoby, who is the grand nephew of Jack and Irving. Donald, welcome.
Glad to be here, Vince.
Thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about the Rosenthal family. There was more than just Jack and Irving, I'm sure.
Well, there were 8 of them. They were amazing in all their glory. And some of them were very simple and just led a very normal life. And then there was Jack and Irving and Anna. Anna was a cousin. She, in her own right, oh, there they are. Jack was a concert violinist. That's how a lot of the funds were eventually raised to rebuild the park after it burned, because it was not insured. That's Jack.
There's Jack. Yep.
Jack was the first violinist of the St. Paul Symphony Orchestra. At 13, he was already an accomplished violinist.
That's impressive at 13.
At 13.
Don, weren't there 2 of the Rosenthal children who was part of a great New York disaster back in the early days?
Yes, my grandmother and my grandmother's sister were in the Triangle Sewing Factory fire.
That was Molly and Rebecca?
That's correct.
And then
Molly
the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory was a fire that happened 1911.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yes.
And they survived that, didn't they?
They survived due to 2 of the students at an NYU dorm that were directly across the street who laid a plank between the 2 roofs, and that's how they and 2 other women got out. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. There was another brother besides Jack and Irving who worked at the park.
Yes, Sam. And Sam actually was in the handbag business in Brooklyn, but when the park was in operation, he ran the parking lot. He was very verbal. He was very definitive in his needs and what he wanted the drivers to do. And he made sure that there were no accidents in the parking lot.
Okay.
But he really wasn't active in any other of the operations of the park.
And then somebody before asked about Anna. Can you tell us a little bit about a lady named Anna Halpern, I guess, originally?
Anna Halpern was her first married name. Her first husband was the personal detective to Mayor Impoliteri in New York City. And eventually she remarried Henry Cook, who was the president of the Carpenters Union and became active in the park after they married. And something that very few people know, on their marriage, Anna was given the saltwater pool as a gift and the receipts. Anna actually ran the park at night. She was the night manager.
Okay.
All right. So her day would start when most people's day ended, and then she would close the park. And she loved to count money. There she is.
There's Anna with Irving.
With Irving. Yep.
And what an incredible gift to give your niece the swimming pool as a gift and the proceeds.
She actually deserved it. She was one of the hardest working ladies I have ever known.
Yeah.
Anna also had a hobby. She had 2 lion cubs that she kept in the office with her. And when the park closed, they were sent to a zoo. And every day Anna would bring 50 pounds of meat for them.
Oh, my Lord.
That goes back to the 70s.
Yep. What kind of boss was Irving to his full-time employees?
He was wonderful. Irving actually did something that is almost unheard of today. To all of his full-time employees, health insurance was provided, no cost, to them and their families.
And that was pretty rare for
Very rare.
An amusement park, certainly for.
I actually didn't know that until I got a little bit older, and I was soliciting my uncle for health insurance, and he turned me down very graciously and told me that he was already taking care of it and told me how. I was amazed.
Wow, very nice. And Jack, who was also running the park with his brother, he eventually got sick and took a lesser role in the daily running of the park.
Yes, he did. He basically, in his final years, he did not even come in, but Irving kept his desk in the administration building, in Irving's office. It said Irving and Jack Rosenthal on the door. And every now and then Jack would come in and visit, but he really wasn't active. He was too sick.
And Jack never married, but Irving did.
Irving did.
Correct.
Irving was married to Gladys, who was, in her own right, she was a lyricist. She actually wrote the Green Bus song, which, there she is. She was quite a lady. She lived a very long time. I think she passed away at 102.
Good Lord, God bless. Didn't she write something that we probably all know?
I'm sure she wrote a few things that you probably know. As a matter of fact, I already have it set aside that when my time comes, it's going to be a gift to the museum.
Well, it's very kind.
Her scripts and her records, and she wrote a lot of music for Freddie Cannon.
And
in the park a lot.
And of course, she wrote the jingle to Palisades Amusement Park.
She did.
So
Come on over.
Come on over.
There. Can anybody sing that of the panelists?
I think easily we probably could. Do we want to? That's the question. Donald, that's some great insight into the lives of the Rosenthal brothers. I thank you. Please, folks, if you just indulge me for just 2 minutes, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the people that made this show possible tonight, the Mahwah Museum. Here's a short video, please. I hope you'll enjoy it. I first discovered the Mahwah Museum when I attended a fabulous exhibit on one of the greatest guitar players in the world, and also a Mahwah resident, Les Paul. It was a great exhibit filled with rich history, great photographs, and the sounds of Les Paul's music was everywhere. That's what won me over to the museum. And then last year, the museum opened their doors and their hearts and allowed me to construct a tribute to Bergen County's own Palisades Amusement Park. I am truly grateful to them not only for giving me one season, but holding it over for a second season. And this year I had the chance. I've added tons of new items to the display. So please, if you're in the northern New Jersey area, please drop by this season and check it out. You won't be sorry. But I say all this because the pandemic has hurt so many businesses that lost most of their revenue for the year, and the museum is no exception. So I'm asking you, go to mahwahmuseum.org and click the donate button and give them whatever you can. If you're in the area, you might consider an annual membership for you or for the whole family. It's not that expensive, and it'll provide you a whole year of fun and education at the museum. But here is something very special just for people watching this webinar. My book, which tells the entire history of Palisades Amusement Park, is now available through the museum's gift shop. With its 200 pages and a foreword by the legendary Cousin Bruce Morrow, this book captures every fond memory of the famous New Jersey Fun Center. And while you might be able to find this book in your local bookstore or even on Amazon, only by buying it through the museum's gift shop can you get an autographed copy. And the proceeds from tonight's sale of this book go to the museum, so you are helping to keep the memories alive. And think about this. Before you know it, Christmas and Hanukkah will soon be here. An autographed Palisades Amusement Park book will make a perfect gift for anyone who remembers this wonderful place. And you don't even have to leave your house to get it. So go to mahwahmuseum.org and click on the link that says Shop. In the book section, you'll find my book there, as well as plenty of other great educational and historical books. Order now to ensure that you'll receive the book in plenty of time for the holidays. Thank you for listening, and now let's get back to the Palisades Amusement Park webinar. My next guest is a fellow whose great-great-grandfather, that's two greats, was Philip Mazzocchi, and that's the man who opened the original penny arcade at Palisades Amusement Park way back in 1915. Chris, hi, thanks for being with us tonight.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chris. Tell us a little bit about your great-great-grandfather, Bonfiglio, otherwise known as Philip Mazzocchi.
All right, so Philip Mazzocchi's family owned a grocery store in Newark prior to 1915, the early 1900s. Philip and a friend, August Burney, wanted more in life. They opened up a skee ball concession at Palisades Amusement Park. The skee ball concession consisted of 20 or 25 or so alleys. And after that, they had then purchased more machines, penny arcade machines, and opened the second concession at the amusement park in 1925, 1930 or so. So those were the early years of them being in the park, you know.
And then eventually your great-grandfather took over from Bonfiglio.
That is correct. Yes, that was after the fire. That was when the larger arcade had been built. That was in 1955. That was my great-grandfather George and his wife Angela. That was most likely in the larger arcade, probably in 1960 or so, that photo.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then you said, you mentioned the fire that happened in 44?
That's correct. So in 1944, the Virginia Reel, I believe it was, caught on fire. And that was located right across from the penny arcade, which was a semi-open wood structure at the time. The entire building burned down. All the machines had burned. And there were photos of, right there, people collecting pennies and nickels and dimes off the ground.
So that's probably the arcade these people are standing on.
That is the arcade. And if you look right next to the gentleman on the right, there is a safe with the door open there.
Okay,
They're actually, those are people most likely from Cliffside going through the rubble, collecting coins off the ground. And early on the morning after, I believe it was my great-grandfather George, my grandmother said, had gone there, opened up the safe, and inside the safe, all the dollar bills had been charred, of course, beyond recognition. And there was actually a clump of metal. All the coins in the safe had melted together.
Wow.
And that's how intense the fire was.
And your grandmother still has that clump of metal, doesn't she?
She had it. She has no idea what she did with it.
Oh, no.
Because I would have it, obviously.
Yeah. It's probably still in her attic in Cliffside when
Probably.
she sold the house.
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
Now, there wasn't just one penny arcade, because Gene mentioned that there was an arcade across from his lemonade stand. How many arcades do you think that your family had in the park?
So in the early days, there were two, I believe, or my Aunt Terry had even said at one point, one might have burnt down. There was a 1925 fire or an earlier fire before 1944.
There was one in 1934, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right. And then after the fire, in the later years of the park, we had three concessions there. They had the large arcade, which consisted of over 400 machines or so. That's the large arcade. In the background of that photo, you see Philip Mazzocchi behind the change booth, all the way in the background. There was a smaller skee ball concession, and there was an arcade that I believe was called the Recreation Building. That was more so toward the front of the park by the administration building.
Now, this picture with all of the telescopes, the movies.
Yeah.
This was the large arcade, correct?
That is correct. Yes,
yeah.
Yes, and that is right.
And,
that's the large arcade.
And this machine, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but this machine right in the front, this machine was donated to the Palisades Historical Society, and I've been trying to get this thing to work. It's a money pit, but someday
it's been sitting for 50 years, right? Not easy to get them going.
No.
I actually got my hands on a Apollo rifle gun game last year.
Oh, really?
that I intend on working on. Yes. So
Well, maybe I'll ask for your help on this one.
absolutely.
And this is also the large arcade, correct?
That is correct. Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You recently obtained one of the original games from the park. This is the game you originally got?
That is correct. Yes. So
And then what I didn't realize until we chatted just last week is
Yep.
that you did most of the restoration of this
that is correct.
game.
Yep, I had a little bit of help on the cabinet itself. You would look at the coin mechanism had been altered, and all of the nickel-plated components of the machine, had corrosion on them. And yeah, I had everything chrome-plated, and the cabinet, I had help restoring it and repairing it, getting the coin mechanism back to the original push coin slide, and that's the restored machine right there. And that
I mean, the quality of the work on this is just phenomenal, Chris. My hat's off to you, sir.
Thank you. That machine had sat. My grandmother owned a 4-family apartment building on Wayne Avenue, right down the block from the park. And any machines that weren't sold when the park closed were put in that basement and sat there from 1971 until 1998. And I found the guy who bought that machine out of her basement in 1998. He had photos of it, and I purchased that machine about 3 years or so ago. And it had just sat for 50 years.
Very, very nice job on it.
Yes.
Now, both your grandmother and your grandfather also worked at the park. So, I mean, this is definitely a family affair when it came to the penny arcades.
Not only did they work in the park, my mother did. My father worked for Eddie the Pollock at the balloon stand.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Joan worked the duck pond. Pierre worked in the penny arcade. There's my grandfather Pierre, my grandmother Joan, and their son Jimmy. Pierre worked in the penny arcades from when he came over here from Italy in 1957. After George had passed away in '65, Pierre went to work directly for Irving Rosenthal, running the Cyclone for the last 6 years of the park. That's Bruno Musa, the co-owner of the penny arcade in later years.
And who's the cute baby?
That's my mother. That's Joan and Pierre's daughter. So that photo is probably 1957. You can see it's probably late winter, right? The park, the pool.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
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 So a lot of history in the park. Since I'm 32 years old, I never made it into the park, but my whole life, all I heard was Palisades Amusement Park stories. And I've heard hundreds of them,
But your family had such a connection with that park, and certainly if the park would have went on another 10 years, you would have been working there and had an important job there too.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. If you could stick around with us, I'm sure we're gonna have questions later.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Now, my next guest, Alan Brennert. Alan grew up in Bergen County, in both Cliffside Park and Edgewater, with the sounds of Palisades Park raining down on him from the Palisades Cliffs. He's an Emmy Award winner, has worked in television on LA Law, The New Twilight Zone, The New Outer Limits, and China Beach. He wrote for the comic industry for DC Comics and created the character of Barbara Kane for the Batman universe. And Alan is a best-selling author. His books include Moloka'I, Honolulu, Daughter of Moloka'I, and one of the most enjoyable novels I have ever read, Palisades Park. Alan, did I miss anything?
No, although Palisades Park is also available in a handy paperback edition.
Yes.
It's great to be here, Vince.
Thank you, Alan. It's an honor to have you here, and all of my guests tonight. I couldn't be more proud to be with all you guys here. For the folks that are watching. Alan, let me ask you a question about your book, Palisades Park. It's a fiction. It revolves around a family called the Stupka family. Can you give us a little synopsis about the book?
Well, the main character of the book is the little girl, Antoinette, Tony Stupka. And she grows up at Palisades Park, seeing, you know, her parents, Eddie and Adele, are concessionaires. They actually own the French fry concession in this alternate universe. And she grows up seeing the high divers like Arthur Holden, you know, diving 100 feet into a tank of water 3 feet deep. And this becomes an obsession with her, and she grows up. Her dream is to become a high diver. Everyone in the family has kind of quirky dreams. So it's a family saga set against the background of Palisades Amusement Park, something I knew very, very well from my childhood, because we always lived like within a mile of the park, and it was a big part of my childhood.
As it was for so many people. Myself, you know, anybody who lived in the area, it was just a great place to be so close to.
Yeah, I have friends in the comic book business who say they saw the little ads for Palisades in the comics that had Superman holding a scale replica of Palisades, and they said, and it looked so magical, and we wanted to go to it there so badly. You lucky bastard, you actually got to go there.
Now, although the Stupka family in your book is fictitious, you not only is the setting very realistic and very accurate, as a person who grew up in Cliffside Park, it was a treat to read a book that talks about walking down Knox Avenue past Epiphany Church, and I'm saying, wow, it's like I'm there. But you also built your book around some real life characters that worked at the park. Tell us about Bunty Hill.
Bunty Hill was a lifeguard at Palisades, but he's really probably best known for the fact that, well, he was a lifelong swimmer. He loved the Hudson River. Most days when he wasn't working, he could be found down at Hazard's Dock. And he became kind of the swim guru for generations of kids from Cliffside Park and Fort Lee. He taught them how to swim, often in the Hudson River, which we all think about now and we go, oh my God, are they still alive or radioactive? But he would the story goes that every year on his birthday, he would swim the width of the park. When swim across of the river, rather, he would go from the New Jersey side to the New York side and back again.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, and he did it. He did it until very late in life. I think he died in his late 70s, and he did it. Still did it in his early 70s.
Now, another character in your book was Arthur Holden.
Arthur Holden was also another interesting. These were all really interesting characters, and I say not the sense that they're fictitious characters, but they were real characters as human beings. Arthur made a name for himself as a high diver by jumping off the Brooklyn Bridge back in the 20s, or perhaps in the teens, and that was about 100 feet high, and he actually managed to survive the dive, and that got him going into business. And by the 1930s, he was the featured high diver at Palisades. But also in the 30s, he had a car accident which laid him up for months. And after that, Irving Rosenthal was a little nervous about asking him to jump 100 foot into a tank full of 3 feet of water, understandably. And he let him go. And this really depressed Arthur. He thought he could still do the job. He was 56 years old, and he felt like he was washed up. And he decided he was going to get his job back, or just not have to worry about it. And he walked over to the George Washington Bridge and climbed up onto the, going on the little pedestrian walkway, climbed up onto the fencing. And he was intending to jump off the George Washington Bridge. And if he survived, get his job back. And if he didn't survive, but the Fort Lee police luckily intercepted him. His wife called him and said, my husband's about to dive off the George Washington Bridge, which was 200 feet high. But he was good. He might have been able to make it.
He could have. But he was doing that high dive way before the Rosenthals. I mean, he was doing it even when the Skank brothers owned the park.
He was, and so it was a great blow to him to lose that job.
Sure.
Needless to say, he got the job back right after he tried to jump off the George Washington.
Yeah, yeah. And another character I remember in your book was one of the concessionaires, Minette.
Minette Dobson was a showgirl, a dancer. She toured the nation in various revues in the 20s. She was from the Cliffside Park area, and she worked as a concessionaire. It was a cigarette wheel, I believe, which was owned by a local real estate developer with whom she was having a long-running affair. And she was a character too. I talked to her nephew Gary and her niece Georgia, and they told me that after the park closed, Minette and her sister opened up a dress shop in Point Pleasant. And she was in her late 60s, and she said Aunt Minette could still dance the rumba on a tabletop.
Nice.
And I learned about her and a lot of others from a woman named Norma Santinello, who graciously granted me 2 long interviews. She grew up playing in crates that used to contain china ware that was a prize in the concession that her parents ran at Palisades. And when she grew up, she inherited the concession. And she gave me a huge amount of wealth of detail about the people who live there, because that's really what I wanted to do. You can't write a book that's just out of nostalgia. And although it had that nostalgia for me, I wanted to know about the people who made the park what it was. The staff, the performers, sure. the concessionaires, and Norma really filled in all of that for me. I mean, she knew where all the bodies were buried.
Yes. Now, the extensive research you did on that book just absolutely floored me. I remember one time you called me with a question about, I think it was about Arthur Holden's trunks. You asked me what color trunks did he wear? And I had no idea. I said, let me get back to you. And I looked in all the newspaper articles I had. Nothing mentioned his trunks. I called you back. I said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And then you called me back a few weeks later and you said they were blue. Most people who's writing fiction would just say, all right, I'm going to call them blue or I'm going to call them red. But why do you do that? Why do you go into such detail? I mean, it's certainly, for me as a reader, it certainly made it much more interesting.
I do it because I'm clinically insane.
That explains it.
This is not something that a rational person would do, but I have this belief. I mean, first of all, I really want to immerse the reader in as many details as possible to recreate the past as closely as I can manage it, whether I was part of it or not. And I really do feel like if you just make that stuff up, and let's face it, sometimes we all have to just make the stuff up. When you can't find a thing, if I hadn't been able to find out the color of the trunks, I would have said, they're red, Yeah. But I try to get it as accurately as possible. And to me, that's the difference between writing a historical novel and writing a period piece. I write historical novels, and so I feel obligated to have that level of detail, which is why it takes me so long to write these things.
Well, I think you said one word in your description just now that I think for me as a reader, it hit home. You said immerse, because that's exactly what your book did as I was reading it. I really felt I was back in time, not only when they were talking about Palisades, and it was, the eras that were long before I was born, but, as they would progress throughout the towns or throughout places in Jersey, I certainly felt that I was immersed in the whole scene. It was like stepping into a time machine with the way you wrote it.
Well, thank you. That's what I intended. I really do. I mean, before I wrote historical novels, I wrote science fiction and fantasy, and there's science fiction and historical novels have one thing in common. They're both about creating worlds. In SF, it's a future world. In historicals, it's the past. And I was never that great at writing science fiction, even though I had a couple of awards for it. But I found like I really found what I was best at when I discovered, historical fiction.
Mm. when you were researching the history of the park, was there anything that surprised you? Something
The
that,
most
go
the
ahead.
most surprising thing was learning that the pool was segregated, because by the time I rolled around, I was probably 5 years old in 1959 when I may have gone, or maybe younger than that, when I waded in the pool, in the saltwater pool for the first time. But by that time, it had been desegregated, or at least largely desegregated. And so I was stunned, and I knew I couldn't ignore this. It was a stain on the park's past, but I had to report it. And I went up to the New York Public Library, the division up in Harlem, and they had old microfilm newspapers of African-American newspapers of the time that had a lot of detail on the efforts to desegregate the Palisades Park pool. And the more I learned about it, the more I learned, well, this is not just something that should be told. It's something that is potentially an exciting plot development here too, and something that my character Tony can be a part of as well. So that was most surprising of it, to discover that this thing that I held in such esteem, it did have a dark shadow in its past, but luckily it did resolve it, as did most places in the North.
And I think that controversy really went on for 3 years, the three biggest years, 1947 to 49, where it was every week there were protests at the park. There were people getting arrested. There were people fighting, until eventually they kept it very low key when it was desegregated and people were people of all colors were allowed to swim in the pool. But it was kind of kept hush hush, which is why you and myself as well, when we got to know the pool, we didn't know anything about the problems that they had back in the 40s.
And Irving Rosenthal claimed that, I think his nieces told me that he said that he only did it because he thought that white people would not go in a pool with black people. And after that proved wrong, he said, well, I should have done this years ago.
Yeah. Now, your latest work is a comic book, Submariner Marvel's Snapshot #1. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. And you have a cover of the edition that I sent to you. That was a limited edition. That is a limited edition cover that was drawn by Jerry Ordway, who drew the fantastic art in the interior. And that's the Cyclone coaster they're fighting.
Yes,
the Cyclone coaster, and we used the old logo. I insisted using the actual logo because the story is set in 1946, and I wanted the logo from 1946. There's another cover which I will show you in a moment, which is actually the one that is more common. That is the splash page of the story. Jerry Ordway is a remarkable artist. He is meticulous when it comes to historical detail. He worked from research materials that I provided him and that he could find on the internet, and he bought himself. And he did just a fabulous job presenting, the park. And you
wrote the story that this is.
Yes, I wrote the script. I was approached by my friend Kurt Busick, who was editing this series, and he said, these stories could be set anywhere in time. This could be, the Submariner goes out with his girlfriend Betty Dean to Palisades Amusement Park. And of course, he threw that into me as an inducement, as if that would really tip me to do it. And I told him later, I said, Kurt, you had me at Betty Dean. So I love that period of time. I love the characters, the Marvel characters from the 1940s. And I'd never gotten the chance to write them before. This is actually the cover, the Alex Ross cover, that is the most common one. So if anybody wants to search this out, this is the one that you'll find it the easiest, and it's the cheapest too. But it was really kind of a joy to write, because I got to write this these characters I loved. I wrote a real old-fashioned Marvel slugfest between Submariner and a villain called the Shark, And I'm afraid in the process, they wreck half of Palisades Amusement Park.
It happens, right?
It happens, you know. I felt a little guilty because I managed to, you know, I brought it back after the fire and my novel, and here I go and I have them wreck it all over again. But it was a lot of fun to write, and I'm glad that I was able to contribute one more addition to Palisades Park ephemera.
Nice. Do you have anything new in the works that you're working on? Anything you could share with us?
I just completed a 13,000-word novelette for George R.R. Martin, who edits a book series called Wild Cards. So I handed that in to him, and it'll probably be published online next year sometime. And other than that, I am working on surviving the pandemic like everybody else.
Like everybody else. Plus, you're in California, so those fires don't pose any threat to you at the present time, I hope.
No, we did get the smoke from the fires up north, and for about 2 weeks, our air quality was so bad that we couldn't go outside and exercise. It was really, you know, the sun was orange all the time. It looked like a Martian sun. But thankfully, we are not at the center of it. But I live in Malibu, which is a fire zone, so you know we're prepared like everybody else to evacuate at a moment's notice.
Well, good luck to you out there.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for joining us tonight, Alan. If you can stand by, I'm sure a lot of your fans are going to have some questions for you. We can open up the floor to questions now. Ken, if anybody has any questions they want to share.
Whatever happened to the wild mouse? And do you have any similar histories that exist about Olympic Park in Maplewood?
I know about Olympic Park. I think there was a book that was published by the same publisher of my original book, Rutgers University Press. I think it was called Smiles, A History of Olympic Park. And as far as the wild mouse, no, it was torn down. Most of the, almost everything that was in the park that was wooden was torn down when they closed in '71. I was surprised to find out that the cars from the cyclone had survived. I assume that was destroyed when they tore down the cyclone. But we found those a couple of years ago in a barn down in Pennsylvania, and we rescued one of those and got it back up here. That's on display at the museum, in fact, or at least the front panel of it is. So that's it. Yeah, the wild mouse is destroyed. But I'll tell you this, if you go to the museum, the building permit for the wild mouse is on display. So you'll get to see that up close and personal.
I think this is probably a question for Glenn. What was your pay per hour, and did you make any money?
For Gene?
Oh, Gene, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Gene. Do you remember what you got paid, Gene?
No, it was probably minimum wage. You know, they really didn't pay much.
You know,
I really don't remember
when I talk to folks who worked at the park who only got $3 a week or whatever it was, you know, most people had the same reaction, and you probably would concur with this, Gene, I think, is that it didn't really matter how much you got paid because it was such a family, you felt like you were part of a bigger family. And I'm sure it was fun to work there. So
going to the park was not Maynard G. Krebs' work. It was just the availability. Wow, I can go in the park. I got a job in the park. Yeah. I'm making lemonades next to French fries. Sure. Come on.
You had bragging rights to all.
And one year, I had a pass to the pool. I had my, my key for around my ankle. Yeah. I was living large.
Nice.
Does anyone have any memories of Superman and Batman rides?
Well, there were two Batman rides. There was the Bat Slide, which was basically you climbed up these stairs like a spiral staircase. When you got to the top, they gave you a burlap sack to sit on, and you would just go down this chute that spiraled around the outside of the building. Of course, because in '66 or so, that's when the Batman series was so popular. the park had deals with DC Comics and Archie Comics. So they just got the rights to Batman. And Superman, I don't think had any rides, but Superman was frequently used in their advertisements. He'd be standing there all spectacular and he would say, "Be my guest, come on over to Palisades Amusement Park."
I don't think I tried to use that in my book somewhere, but I just couldn't do it.
Was Palisades considered more of a neighborhood park, or did it have a much larger impact on the popular imagination compared to a really huge park like Great Adventure or even Coney Island? Did the Palisades exhibit have the same influence?
Well, Palisades was huge. It was, there were times when it was as popular, if not more popular, than Coney Island. So it was, and part of that was because in '62, Freddie Cannon came out with the song Palisades Park. And, that got people from across the country, really across the globe, who heard the record to wonder what this place was that he was singing about. And he also advertised in comic books, which at the time didn't have regional advertising like we have today. So when they put an ad with Superman saying, "Be my guest and come on over to Palisades Park," everybody who bought this comic, whether it be here in the New York area or out in California or even in England, they saw these ads, of Superman saying, "Come to Palisades Amusement Park." So it was not by any means considered a local park. It was far bigger than that. But for us, if we lived in town, it was our park.
Where was a picture taken with the airplane? I don't remember that at the park.
I'm not sure what
that means.
One of the founders was standing by an airplane. One of the brothers was standing by.
That was I think that was a promotion for a ride called, who was the general in World War II? Sorry, MacArthur?
Yes,
MacArthur. I think it was called MacArthur's Bombers. It was a ride. And I think they had that there as part of that promotion. I think that was what that photo was from.
Any movies made at Palisades Park?
There were TV shows. There were quite a number of TV shows that were filmed at Palisades. I can't think of any movies other than the posters that were used in West Side Story. You saw Palisades Amusement Park posters frequently in that movie. And in The Godfather, Gene, you know what I'm talking about in The Godfather? There's one scene that for years I never knew it until I got a Blu-ray and saw the high definition version of this scene where they're pulling up to Louis' restaurant where Michael is meeting to do in the bad guy.
Best veal in the city.
Yeah, the best veal in the city. And as they pull up to the front of Louis', there's a Palisades Amusement Park poster on the wall right next to Louis'. But in the original version, you didn't really see it because it was dark. But they brightened it up as as new versions of that the Godfather were released.
Are there any fine art paintings of the park anywhere?
Boy, there's one on YouTube, on eBay that has been there for at least the last 12 years. And the guy wants some, I don't know, $37,000 for it. It's not even that good, in my opinion. So I don't know. I guess it's fine art because he wants $37,000 for it.
Yeah, somebody made a comment that silent films were made along the Palisades, but I would imagine that's before the park was there.
No. The park opened in 1898.
Oh,
and most of the silent films, there were at least 3 that I found, well, 4, including one from Fatty Arbuckle, that were filmed at Palisades, in Palisades Park. A couple of them you can't really tell because they didn't film rides, but they filmed like an entrance. But there was the very first Pearl White Perils of Pauline, there was a scene that was filmed in Palisades Park. So yeah, in the early days, because remember, there wasn't a California, there wasn't a Hollywood, California, in the early days of movies. It was Fort Lee, New Jersey, which is one of the towns that Palisades was in. So it became, you know, a perfect setting for a lot of those early films.
Does anyone remember being dared to go under the waterfall while swimming at the pool?
I didn't. I wasn't there.
Oh yeah, and there was a room in the back that you could go
behind the falls.
Behind the falls, yeah,
Really?
yeah. There was a door, and you can go through it and come out the other side.
And you did that. It's okay. We won't tell. We do have a relative here, though, who may scold you.
I never told you where the gate was in the fence.
The hole in the fence?
The hole in the fence. It was right by Anna's house on the east side of the park.
Ken, did you see the link for the song?
I did see the link for the song. Somebody's asking if we could play it. I'm having a problem with my audio on my Mac. So I don't know if somebody else could access that. It's in the
What song are we talking about?
Palisades Park.
The Freddie Cannon song?
I
Yes,
believe so, yeah.
I'm not sure we have the right to play that, to tell
I
you
don't
the
think you
truth.
do.
Yeah.
This is a free educational event. We didn't charge
Yeah,
you money.
yeah. Tell it to the judge, you know what I mean?
Was there a theme song for the park?
The theme song, the Come On Over theme song.
Yeah, maybe that's what they're talking about.
I don't have it handy. I mean, maybe I could get it.
The February program, you can dig that up for the February.
Yeah. Actually,
Look forward to it.
it is part of the February program. So
Great,
there's another reason you want to be there on February 20th.
great.
Any other questions?
I think we covered everything.
All right. Well, you know, I want to say, remember, folks, you can get a autographed copy of this book if you go to the mahwahmuseum.org, and remember, the proceeds from the book there will go to the museum, and I will autograph it before we ship it to you. I want to thank everyone for being here. I especially want to thank my guests who were with us tonight. Remember, if you enjoyed this webinar, please let me know. You could write me at vince@palisadespark.com.
I enjoyed it.
Well, I know you enjoyed it. But I want to thank my guests, Gene Focarelli, Donald Jacoby, Chris Page, and Alan Brennert. Thank you guys for being here tonight. It was an honor to be with you tonight. I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I did. I want to thank Ken Pokraus. Sorry, Ken. Pokrowski, and Adam, who are working for us behind the scenes, Charlie Carreras, and Kathy Hadjo from the museum for putting this all together. Please, folks, support the museum.
One more thing, Vinny. Thank you, Vinny, because you're the brainchild behind all of this. We haven't emphasized enough that we're open on Saturdays from 1 to 4, and we have all appropriate protocols for being safe, 10 people at a time, proper sanitation, fiberglass for the desk, and so forth and so on. So please consider coming by to see all the great things that Vinny's been talking about. And we look forward to all of you participating on February the 20th. So please become a member and send a donation.
One more thing, one more question. Somebody's asking where they could hear the recording of the theme song. And I believe you could probably get that on YouTube.
Yeah, I have it on YouTube. If you just search for the Palisades Amusement Park jingle, somebody donated to me some footage, original film footage that was used for the commercial, and I was able to put that all together with the song because there was no audio with the film footage she gave me. But I put that together with the song, so you get to see the original commercial what it looked like for Palisades, and you'll hear the jingle there. So just search for Palisades Amusement Park jingle on YouTube, and you'll find it.
Vince, I want to thank you for keeping the memory of the park alive.
My pleasure, Donald. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're going to say good night.
Adios.
Good night. Thanks, Bob.